my colleague Sumita Karir caught up with the man behind Farzi Cafe. Savoring the spirit of Diwali with Zorawar Kalra, he talks about how Massive Restaurants is cooking up a storm and what's in store down the line. Listen in.
We at Massive, for example, and many people, many of my peers in the industry are not passing on the cost of that inflation onto the consumer.
Okay.
So because you're not increasing prices, maybe the consumption dip can be avoided to some extent. Obviously, at some point in time, it may need to be passed on if the costs do not come under control. But luckily, many of us have these analyzed contracts, so it's able to kind of, you're able to cushion the blow to some extent. After the 12th, we've seen a big rise, a big uptick, and all of that downside seems to have gone. And November and December are going to be clean months because the festivities would mostly be over. Diwali would end around the 1st, and then 2nd and 3rd, we expect things to go up. And last year was actually the best December for us on record. Burgeoning middle class. I mean, our middle class is bigger than the population of the US. And they're getting richer, they're enjoying eating out. As I said earlier, eating out is the #1 form of entertainment for Indians.
And this is what is also, Zorawar, keeping the India growth story intact as well, because domestic consumption, domestic demand has largely been robust when you compare it with other countries. But then, Zorawar, when you see here, we're sitting here in DLF Cyber Hub, there are so many restaurants, and I was just talking to Ryan as well. There is one restaurant coming up every day. So the competition in this sector is immense. It really takes a lot to sort of, keep growing, keep being profitable, and, keep getting footfall. If you see Gurgaon, for instance, there's so many different concept cafes that have come up. How does one really keep the game strong? But
it's a very fast-moving business. People say fast fashion is fast. Food is even faster.
Yes.
A restaurant or a concept ceases to be relevant if it doesn't innovate for 6 months. If you do not have something fresh, something new happening in your restaurant many times a year, you will lose mind space. 90% of all restaurants shut down within the first 1 year, and 96% shut down within 18 months. One of the biggest reasons is undercapitalization. So people get into it for the wrong reasons. They want to have an extension of their drawing room. That's not the way to run this business. This is a pure passion play. We're expecting to be at about 8 cities by the end of the fiscal year. So that's happening in a very big way. But I'm very positive about the overall industry. We also contribute between 2 and 3% to the country's GDP. And one of the things that kind of gives me a little bit of pain, I think, thinking about the industry is the fact that we have lost out on GST input tax credit. We used to get that credit before the GST.
And that's something that you've been very vocal about to the government.
Yes, it is the biggest thing affecting the industry today.
And you also want the industry status for the restaurant business. That is one of the key demands that you have.
Like I said, second largest employer.
So what are the challenges, for instance, that you perhaps as a business owner is facing in the absence of that?
We don't have a minister that we can go and talk about our complaints.
Yes.
It would be great to get industry status. If somebody is contributing between 2 and 3% to a $4 trillion economy, I think they're a fairly important player. If they're the second highest employer of human capital, I think they're a fairly important player. So I think it's only right for us to be given industry status. If we have our own minister, we have somebody to talk to. We can pose our complaints. The customer have a forum. Like I said, our first priority is GST input tax restoration. If the ITC is restored, that helps us keep our neck and head above water. We're at least able to survive.
But let me also ask you, Zorawar, the kind of tech disruption that we're seeing across industries. You have AI, you also have now businesses completely going online. You spoke about Cloud Kitchen. So if you, as an entrepreneur, had to start up a restaurant today, what kind of a change that you're seeing in the overall startup ecosystem, the kind of investor interest that you would have gotten today versus maybe a couple of decades back?
I think the past decade, you've seen a significant increase in investor interest in the space. A year ago, there was no money. Nobody was willing to put in money. There was only the offline space, which is traditional restaurants. A decade later, you've seen the market size maybe double, maybe more than that. Had the GST input tax restoration not been an issue, it would have been even quicker. But the fact is, you're seeing far more investor interest. The consumer demand, the consumer story has become a lot stronger. And you're suddenly seeing that, people are willing to put the money to back up these incredible companies. And the importance of tech is playing a huge role. I think in order to, this industry is an industry which has got a lot of gaps or holes that need to be plugged. There is no better way to plug those gaps than through the use of technology.
But what kind of efficiencies do you think, this integration of technology or AI is going to bring overall, to the sector, to the industry? Because now we're seeing, if you see the IT space, for instance, companies have already started deploying these chat GPT type LLMs and, they're coming up with their own models to drive efficiencies. Some are even generating revenue. So how far before that happens for the restaurant business? Like you said, it's early days.
It's already happening. I'm seeing a lot of emails coming up with very perfect, crisp English already in our system. So a lot of our people are already using these chat boxes and LLMs to construct emails. Over-reliance on this technology can be negative. You should use it to enhance business efficiency. But don't let the human creative aspect be compromised.
Speaking about Zorawar technological disruptions, I think companies like Zomato or all of these aggregators have really sort of, helped restaurants like yourselves get more footfalls. But they also have, increased carriage fee as well. Then you also have, payment gateways that also add some sort of a costing bit to it.
Yeah, I think the cost of doing business on these platforms is becoming quite expensive, especially for some new players. And I think there has to be a lot of engagement. There has to be a lot of talk with the platforms. At this current rate of commissions and other fees, it might become unsustainable and the entire model of delivery might become unprofitable.
But then is ONDC helping in that sense?
Yes. So currently it's a duopoly. ONDC currently has a very small piece of the pie, but we're seeing it grow quite extensively. And I think it's going to see a lot of wide industry-wide support.
So Zorawar, since we're talking about entrepreneurship, setting up businesses, and of course the various facets of running a restaurant business, let me also ask you, you've taken your father's legacy and just taken it to another level altogether. What is your advice to all the budding entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs already in this space on scaling up? Because one needs to really sort of factor in when to scale up and how much to scale up.
He loved his Indian cuisine dearly. He was, I think, India's first true food historian. He wrote many books.
Absolutely.
His main goal was to put Indian food on the global palate. And through him, I've kind of taken on the baton. And I just love the idea of promoting our culture through our food, because there's no better way to promote your culture than through its food. And I firmly believe that we have the greatest cuisine on earth. He tried to promote it globally and he did a damn good job of it. Talking about the future entrepreneurs and the young people that want to scale up, talking about the growth, I think it's very important to be careful about your money spending. You get investor money, there's this pressure from the investor, grow. But you cannot grow unprofitably. I think that's the mistake a lot of people have made. And in some cases, even I made with some of our international expansions. We try to go a little too quickly. I think it's very important to study a product market fit. If you're going to go and open a steakhouse in Gujarat, you're going to fail. You've got to figure out what is the product and what is the market, and then create a product that fits that market. The old way of running Indian businesses, the Marwadis and the Gujaratis, the way they used to run it, that is the correct way of running business.
There is a huge interest, domestic retail investor interest in IPOs that are coming. Even small companies are launching their IPOs. But some founders whom I have spoken to, they don't want that pressure of the public markets on them, because, you have to deliver day after day after day and you're responsible and accountable to your investors. But what do you really make of that? And do you have those dreams of getting listed on D Street someday?
Oh my God, I can't even tell you how long I've had that dream. I think every entrepreneur really wants to ring that bell, in the NSE or in the BSE or, in the New York Stock Exchange, and I think that's such a nice goal to have. And I think, yes, of course, the pressures of being in a public space with public money, the kind of compliances are huge, but isn't that the end result? I definitely want to do that. And we're hoping that, with the next 2 years of solid growth, we'll be in a better position. You will have to measure your numbers month on month, quarter on quarter. But I think that's the pressure that a tough entrepreneur is willing to accept.
Have you given yourself a timeline?
Yes. It's too early for me to, I can't say to you on this, but let me tell you, it's a fairly quick timeline. I'm not looking at too long before we are in a position to get a banker on to try and get our red herring prospectus going.
Before we end this conversation, Zorawar, I have to do a quick rapid fire with you. Are you set?
I'm always afraid of rapid fires.
Okay. Number one, what's your personal favorite mithai? I know that you don't have a sweet tooth, but...
Jalebi, without a doubt. Jalebi, and I have it weirdly. I have it with ice cream. Hot jalebi with cold vanilla ice cream.
If not a restaurant, what would you be?
Race car driver. Easy. I love the adrenaline rush.
One defining moment for you in your business?
The day that I opened Farzi Cafe in Dubai in 2017, and the goal of putting Indian food on the global palette, that journey started that day.
One advice you'd give to somebody who wants to open a restaurant in these times, what would it be?
Be very careful with your marketing spends. If you're opening a cloud kitchen, make sure you're not undercapitalized. If you're opening a restaurant, make sure you're not undercapitalized. Keep at least 6 months of gestation money of working capital in your bank.
One inspirational leader in India and from abroad to you.
Narayana Murthy, Mr. Narayana Murthy. I think he has done so much for putting Indian tech on the global palette, and also Nandan Nilekani. And also Nandan Nilekani, because he's through IPO and Aadhaar and various things he's done.
Yes.
I think he's the true CTO of this country. And of course, how can I not take the name of Mr. Ratan Tata?
I was just coming to that. He's just...
I don't know. I've never had the opportunity or the pleasure of meeting him, but just what I've heard, that he was a man. He was a true Ratan of this country.
Absolutely.
And I don't think...
And he gave back so much to society.
I mean, what nobler way to live your life?
Yes. And one international. Someone who's an inspiration for you. It's rapid fire. You can't take that much time to think.
I'm gonna say Warren Buffett, because he's been a guy that has been fairly consistent in his approach to investment.